Hi, welcome to another 12-minute prep lesson. Today I'm going to explain to you everything you need to know about the PI behavioral assessment, including preparation tips, examples, best practices, understanding your scores, and much more. Let's start.
The Predictive Index Behavioral Assessment, or PI, is a work-related behavioral test that evaluates personality traits and is frequently used for employment purposes. The test is often used together with a cognitive assessment and an in-person interview to get a holistic view of a candidate. The test usually takes less than 10 minutes to complete and has no traditional questions on it. Rather, you will just be asked to fill out 2 identical checklists of 86 adjectives. While the 2 checklists are identical, the instructions for them are slightly different. The first checklist will ask you to choose adjectives that describe the way others expect you to behave. This is known as self-concept. The second checklist will ask you to pick adjectives that describe yourself. Doing so reveals your core native drives. This is simply known as self. The combination of the 2 questionnaires helps employers understand how you manage your behavior given the gap between your natural self and your environment-based self-concept. What you select as well as what you don't select from the list of adjectives reveals a lot of relevant data about you to potential employers. Upon submission, your responses are analyzed and translated into what is called a synthesis. Your synthesis will be matched with one of 17 available PI profiles, which describe your drives and needs in a workplace. It will also be crossed with a specific profile that was pre-built by the employer. Every profile is built based on the relationships between 4 major factors or drives. Factor A is dominance, the drive for impact. Factor B, extroversion, the drive for social interaction. Factor C, patience, consistency and stability. And factor D, formality, conforming to rules and structure. There are 2 additional factors that we will discuss later on. Factor E, how emotions take part in decision making, and factor M, which is response levels. Make sure to look at some detailed score reports that I've linked to in the description below. As mentioned earlier, the test does not contain any questions. However, there are many adjectives that frequently appear on the checklists, and it's worth taking a look at some of them to understand how they relate to each of the major drives. First, let's look at some words that relate to dominance. Dominance is defined as the drive for impact. Some words that correspond with this trait, ranked from low to high dominance, are compliant, supportive, collaborative, determined, assertive, and forceful. This means that if you checked off words like assertive or forceful, you would be assessed as having a high dominance trait. If you checked off compliant, you would be low dominance. Now let's look at some words that relate to extroversion. Extroversion is defined as the drive for social interaction. Some words that correspond with this trait from low extroversion to high extroversion are private, reflective, sociable, and influential. Next, let's look at some words that relate to patience. Patience is defined as the drive for consistency and stability. Some words that correspond with this trait from low to high are rushed, tense, calm, and easygoing. Finally, let's take a look at some words that relate to formality. Formality is defined as the drive for conforming to rules and structure. Some words that correspond with this trait from low to high are impulsive, flexible, serious, strict, and vigilant. Prep is a must. Preparing for a personality test may seem a bit counterintuitive. It would make more sense that if you really wanted to reveal your true personality, you would go in completely unprepared. The truth, in my opinion, is that this isn't entirely the case. Some preparation is helpful to ensure that you are presenting the best version of yourself when you go in for the assessment, and that you're not stressed out. We will go over 3 main prep points. taking a personality test in advance, researching the job description and the required traits for the job, using best practices during the test itself. First of all, you can prepare by taking other free personality tests to get an understanding of what these tests say about you. There are some examples linked in the description below which I urge you to try out. Once you have done that, look over the results and send them to a friend or a family member to see if they closely reflect who you are. This will give you a pretty good idea of what the PI will say about you when you take it, and it will help you set expectations for the position you're trying to apply for. Researching and matching adjectives to your job. There are no right answers on the PI behavioral assessment. However, it is important to understand what specific traits employers are looking for when they're hiring for a specific position. Before taking the PI, you should do research into your potential employer, your desired job, and the necessary skills and personality traits that are required for it. On their website, PI has a list of 17 reference profiles that map out different types of people. You can find a link with more details about each of those 17 profiles in the description below. Look over them to see if you can figure out which one is most in line with the job you're applying for. You can then see which adjectives make up this profile and ask yourself if they line up with your own natural drives. Let's take a look at one of the profiles as an example. This profile is called the captain. The captain is listed as a social profile and is a natural leader who is proactive and takes charge to move things forward. Their 4 factors are broken down as follows: dominance, very high, authoritative; extroversion, high, sociable; patience, low, driving; and formality, moderate, flexible. From this, you can see which adjectives would align with this profile. For example, as mentioned earlier, words like assertive and determined correspond to high dominance, and words like sociable and influential correspond to high extroversion. If you're applying for a job that requires leadership, managing people or processes, and working in a fast-paced and social environment, then you should expect that marking down these adjectives will help you to contribute to your chances of getting the job. It is important to note that this isn't about gaming the system. Even if you were to learn exactly which traits to choose to get a certain position, you likely won't have much success once you earn the job if there is a large gap between your personality traits and the requirements for the position. Rather, you should know what the position is looking for, and then, given that you still think you'd be a good fit, know which of your traits to emphasize on the assessment. Now let's review some best practices while taking the test. How many adjectives should one choose? When it comes to the PI itself, you may be wondering how many adjectives to check off from the 86 listed. The amount you choose does matter. You don't want to choose too few or too many. At the extremes, choosing less than 6 or more than 80 will compromise the statistical validity of the test. Employers may also see these extreme patterns and ask that you retake the assessment. The number of adjectives you mark is referred to as the M factor, which was mentioned earlier. The M here stands for morale. The M factor has no direct impact on the factor analysis, but may have implications for how likely you are to engage with the workplace. It can also be an indicator of stress or energy levels. The Predictive Index website says if someone selects fewer words from the checklist, either due to not knowing what some words mean or thinking that those words do not describe him or her, or what is expected of him or her, the person is simply reacting to the PI environment as he or she would react in the actual workplace environment. So, given all that information, how many adjectives should you choose from the list of 86? The answer is that there isn't really an exact number, but you should be reasonable about it. I'd recommend choosing anywhere between 20 and 50 words. Choosing adjectives and comparing lists. You may also be asking yourself if you should be choosing different adjectives on the 2 checklists. In general, there is no problem with marking different adjectives on each list. It is completely natural for there to be differences between your perceived self and self-concept. Everyone has to make some adjustments between their natural self and the way they interact with their workplace. However, be careful not to make the two lists too different. Extreme differences between the two lists may raise a flag. This may show two completely different personas, and employers may decide not to move forward with your application. If they do decide to move forward, they may want to understand how much stress is involved in closing this large gap. They may try to find this out during the interview process. For example, they may ask, if your current employer could make the job the perfect place for you, how would it be different from where it is today? If you're applying for a job that is similar to your current job, extreme differences will imply an inferior fit for the job. The large gap makes it clear that there is a gap between who you are as a person and what the role demands from you. As with the question of how many to choose, the answer here is that it's all about balance. Having differences between your two lists is completely normal, but try to avoid extreme differences that may present you as a poor fit. The majority of employers that use the PI behavioral assessment will also have you take the PI cognitive assessment. Preparing for the cognitive assessment is crucial. Countless studies have shown that preparing for cognitive tests can drastically improve your score. Please check the links in the description to learn how I can help you prepare for this assessment. That's it. I hope you found this lesson useful.